Okay, Assalamualaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Literary Criticism, section 4. Okay, so welcome back. All right, so this is a replacement class for tomorrow morning. Okay, we only have to do this is a one-time thing. Yeah, okay, I am we're not replacing this forever. Okay, it's just that tomorrow I have work to do in the morning. Okay, next week we will proceed with 8 a.m. unless there's something else coming up. All right. Anyway, let's have a look at our topic for today. Okay, so this is our first lecture. This is a lecture number 1. Okay, in our class yesterday, okay, we talked about I gave the introduction, the briefing, okay, to this subject. Okay, we talked about the assessments, okay, uh, the objective of the course, right? We also discussed the importance of having of literary criticism, right? The importance of having of knowing, yeah, of knowing literary theory, okay, especially to for us who are in the who specialize in the field of language, okay, because literature is inseparable from language, okay. English literature inseparable from English language, all right. Malay literature from the Malay language, right? It is an integral part. Okay, so what are we looking at today? Okay, today we're going to look at. So the title of today's topic is Introduction to Literary Theory and Criticism. Okay, we're going to look at that concept of criticism. Okay, in a bit more detail. Okay, I will also give you a quick brief rundown of the kind of literary theory that we are going to look at in future classes. Okay. Okay, let's have a look. Here is an overview of the content, okay, of today's lecture. We're going to talk about what is literary theory. Okay, what is this literary theory? Where does it come from? Okay, and so on. The types of literary theories that exist, okay, and then from there we follow up with literary criticism. Okay, we touched on this a little bit yesterday. Okay, so what is literary criticism? What are the objectives of criticism? Okay, why is it important? All right. uh, and then we will look at literary theories and approaches. Okay, so these are, I'll give you a quick summary of all the different theories that we will eventually talk about in our future class. Okay, and then we'll talk about history of literary theory. Okay, so history of literary theory. We go back in history and see where it all began, where it all started, right? Now, when you think about all of the literary theory, we've talked about the topics that we discussed yesterday, right, in class. The topics look or sound like something very modern. Okay, but literary theory actually has a history that stretches back to the beginning of literature itself. Okay, when people started creating poetry, okay, there's already people that it's ready to comment and criticize or troll. Okay, so literary theory has quite a long history that goes along with it, right? And then we will talk about some traditional critical theories. Okay, we will cover the topic of traditional critical theories in more detail next week. Okay, so at the end of this lecture, I will conclude by a brief overview of traditional theories. Okay, let's have a look at this, right? What is literary theory? What do we mean by literary theory? Okay, why is there a theory or framework or and so on, okay, related to literature? Okay, when we think of literature, we think of books, novels, right, poems, songs, films, and so on, right? Aren't those things just for entertainment, for enjoyment, and so on, right? Why is there a theory attached to it? Okay, why is there an academic aspect attached to literature and media, films that you want to watch, and so on, right? Can't we just sit and watch and enjoy? Okay, no problem. Okay, you can read a book and enjoy the book. Okay, no problem at all. But like we discussed yesterday, literature is an integral part of language, right? It is an integral part of culture. Okay, it is what makes us, it is the expression of humanity, right? We are not robots. We do not grow up in a lab, right? We do not base our lives, okay? We don't center our lives on just purely rational and scientific basis. Okay, society is also one that practices culture. Okay, and because of that, we produce literature, we produce art, we produce films, media, and so on as an expression of that culture. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that it is something very important, something that is worth studying. Okay, and from that effort to study culture and literature and so on, okay, you have theory. Okay, you turn something into an academic pursuit, you will have a theory. Okay, so what is literary theory, right? It is a set of principles, methodologies, okay, and guide scholars, critics, and readers in analyzing and understanding literature. Okay, so it's a set of principles and methods that help the critics, the readers, okay, and academic scholars to better understand literature. Okay, it goes beyond the examination of one individual text. It seeks to explore a broader question about the nature of literature, nature of language, and the nature of culture and the reader. Okay, so when we talk about theory, we do not create a literary theory just to examine one book or one novel, one film. Okay, it's not worth it, right? you when we talk about theory, it is a framework of ideas, okay, that can be applied to many different works, okay, many different works of literature. Some of these theories tend to be more effective to certain literature, okay, but in the general idea is that you can apply any of these theories to any literary work. Okay, what you get out of it tend to differ. Okay, literary theory encompasses a wide range of approaches and perspective. Each will emphasize on different aspects of literature. Okay, so each of these theory will focus on different things. Okay, it employs distinct methods, right? Methodology. So, literary theory contributes to the development and evolution of literary criticism, okay, because it provides foundational ideas and framework that informs how literary works are analyzed and understood. Okay, so it evolves. Literary theory helps literary criticism evolve, makes it better, makes it more efficient, makes it more accurate. Yeah. How does it do that? It does that by providing foundational ideas, by providing knowledge. Yeah. For you to, so it makes your judgment better, okay, because you now have knowledge, yeah, to judge things. All right. Okay, so what is literary criticism? Okay, so we've talked about this yesterday. When we think of the word criticism, okay, we often take the word critique, right? Okay, we often think of the word critique or criticize, right, which often carry a very negative connotation. Okay, a very negative meaning, right? When you criticize someone, it's always, you know, you're looking at the negative aspect, right? You're looking at when you're criticizing someone's work, it means that you are looking for problems, looking for errors, looking for mistakes, right? You send in you know, you go, you bring your assignment to your lecturer for consultation. Your lecturer criticize your work, meaning what? Looking for mistakes, looking for, you know, weaknesses, right? But criticism in this sense, okay, is less of a of it's less about looking for errors. Okay, uh, it is closer to the word critique. Okay, nah, siapa tu? Sharman, I need to mute you, yeah.
Sorry, sir.
Okay. Okay, so criticism here is a lot closer to the word critique, right? Critique meaning to judge, to evaluate. Okay, and when you judge something, you evaluating something. It's not necessarily just the negative you're looking at, right? You are weighing the strength and weaknesses. You're weighing the positive and the negative, right? You are making judgments. It's less negative, right? You're not just focused on the negative aspect only, or you're not looking for mistakes in a, you know, in a movie or a novel or whatsoever. Okay, you watch a movie, right? You can critique the movie, which is very fair. Okay, you evaluate the movie, you judge the movie. Okay, those are all very fair, very positive. Okay, you're not there to criticize the movie. If you say, "Oh, I criticize this movie," that, you know, carries the meaning of something very negative. Yeah. Okay, so literary criticism. In our case here, like I said, to critique something is to evaluate it, to make judgment. Okay, criticism here is the analysis, the interpretation, and the evaluation of literary works, okay, including various forms of literature such as novels, poetry, plays, short stories, okay, films included into that, and so on. Songs, yeah, you can critique songs as well. Less traditional, right? It involves the examination of the content, the style, the structure, the themes, and historical context of a piece of literature. Okay, you examine all these things, okay, in order to gain a deeper understanding of the meaning and the significance of these literary works. Yeah. So, in other words, it's the name given to works that are written by experts who critique or analyze the work of authors. Okay, literary criticism helps readers understand a text in relation to the author, the culture, as well as in relation to other texts. Okay, now what does that mean? Okay, when we judge literature, or when we critique literature, right, you are not just looking at you know, purely the content of that story, of the text, right, you know, of a film or whatsoever, right? Often we make relate we would relate our critique to also include the experiences of the author and so on. Okay, the intentions of the author, and things like that. Okay, the culture in which the author grew up in, and so on. Okay, that the author might want to portray. Okay, you can if you look at, say, a lot of film reviews, okay, or film video essays, right, about films. They would talk about how, scenes of the films were inspired by what the author's intention, or whatsoever, right? Okay, that is part of criticism. Okay, now criticism can also look at the relation of the text to other texts, okay, to other stories, okay, to other uh to other novels, to other films that perhaps inspire the creation of this film that you are critiquing. Okay, now this is not something new. Okay, for example, if you are interested in Shakespearean literature, right, you can look at the you can critique works of Shakespeare, okay, and how it relates to other authors that were, also of his time. Okay, so when we think about you know English writer, we think, oh, yeah, William Shakespeare, right? As if he's the only writer of his time, of the Elizabethan era. He was not. Okay, there were other contemporary writers as well during, that were writing alongside and competing with Shakespeare. Okay, for example, there was Christopher Marlowe. Right, there was another great rival of Shakespeare, Ben Jonson. Okay, and these people, they compete with one another. Okay, to take so one example of this relation to other texts. All right, you can look at William Shakespeare writing, or producing the play entitled The Gentleman of Verona. Okay, so in that story, but it takes place in exotic Italy and so on. Okay, uh, and it has all of these very exotic elements. Okay, and then, to compete with that, okay, Ben Jonson produced something similar as well, okay, as a response to Gentleman of Verona, which is a play called Volpone, okay, which also took place in Italy and so on. Okay, so it's a response to what Shakespeare has written and so on. Okay, so uh so when you critique these works, okay, you can say, oh, this is respond to this, or this was inspired by this, and so on. Okay, you can see something similar to the film industry as well. Okay, Hollywood, or any in the realm of film. Okay, one director is inspired by another, and so on. One director is remaking a film, right? That is that falls under criticism as well. Yeah. um, okay, so literary criticism is often referred to as secondary source. Okay, so secondary source, because it is used to analyze your primary work, the work or the text that you are reading. Okay, so secondary source. Let me talk about this. Right, what does this mean? Secondary source. It means that when you are analyzing literature, let's say you're doing your assignment, right? You're doing your assignment, your literature assignment. You are tasked with reading and analyzing a novel, for example. Okay, so you read the novel. Okay, so you have your own ideas from the novel, right? Okay, you get your own ideas, your own interpretation of the novels, right? So when you write your criticism of this novel, okay, a primary source would be the novel itself. Okay, so let's say you read the novel and you say, okay, this character is actually like this, is struggling against this, and so on, right? Okay, let's say, let me give you a clearer example, right? So for example, you are you are reading and analyzing the novel Dune, right, by Frank Herbert, right? So you say, okay, this character, the main character, Paul Atreides, okay, is a symbol of the apa of the prophetic ruler and so on. Okay, so you say to support your argument, you point to the text, right? You say, for example, on this page in this line it says this and this and this, right? Okay, so that is using primary source. Okay, you are referring to the text. Now, to support your argument, okay, what do we usually do to support our argument? We would find other, let's say, journal or articles, right? Other people, okay, what do other people say about this, right? To support our arguments, okay. A lot of the time, a lot of the time, okay, those experts, those scholars that we take from, right, are literary critiques. Okay, so when we use the words of others, okay, to support our argument, that is using secondary source. Okay, okay. To reiterate, using the example from yesterday. Okay, imagine that you went to a restaurant. Okay, you went to a restaurant, you ate at a restaurant, and the food was very delicious, right? Primary and you now you go home, you tell your friends, right? You tell your friend, oh, but the food at that restaurant was delicious, right? Your friend asks you, what's so delicious about it? Okay, apa yang sedap, right? Apa yang sedap? Okay. What do you say? Okay, if you say, perhaps you describe to your friend the chicken chop that you ate at the restaurant. Okay, the dia punya apa, outside was very crispy, right? And, inside is soft. Right, you cut into it, the chicken was fresh and so on, and it goes very well with the gravy and so on. And the fries were crispy, right? Okay, so all of that, you are basing it on what? What do you base all that opinion on?
Primary opinion.
It's primary opinion, right? But when you tell your friend about that, right? That judgment, that opinion that you've made, right, is based on what? Is it based on the, what's written in the menu of the restaurant?
No,
No, it's based on
based on our own opinion.
yeah, but where does that opinion come from?
Based on our taste.
Yeah, okay. Take your taste or your experience at the restaurant, right? You went and you ate chicken chop, right? Okay. It's not. So you have experienced the food at the restaurant. Okay, so that is primary source, as Hafi mentioned just now, right? It is primary source. You go to the restaurant, you ate the food there, and then you have your own opinion. So that is primary source. Okay, bukannya apa, you go to the restaurant, you survey tengok orang makan apa kan. Macam tu. That's not primary source. Okay, now what about secondary source in terms of food review here? Okay, in terms of answering what your friend say. Okay, your friend asks you apa yang sedap kat situ kan, at the restaurant. You talk about the chicken chop and so on, right? And then you, to support your argument, you say this restaurant is also recommended by Khairul Aming, for example kan. You say, okay, I saw this restaurant, okay, on Khairul Aming's page. He made a review. Okay, he said it was very nice. He gave it a 5 star or something. Okay, so that is a secondary source. Okay, you say, so you provide apa? You provide citations. Yeah, you provide citations from other reviewers, other restaurant food reviewers, and so on. Okay, to support your argument, to make your argument to your friend more persuasive, right? You tell your friend, okay, oh, CEO Batu makan kat situ, kan? Apa? Dia kata sedap, right? Apa kaki review kata apa sos dia jahat kan. Okay, nah, those are all secondary source. Okay, cuma secondary source pun dia tengok lah. Okay, you have to you have to you have to consider lah who's giving that secondary source. Okay. Okay. So anyway, so that's the difference. Primary source and secondary source, right? Secondary source are basically citations, right? Citations or references from experts, so-called experts. Okay. Primary source, your own experience. So kalau you go and watch a movie, and by watching the movie, you formulate your own opinion. Okay, and when you make your arguments, your persuasion and so on, you're referring to that experience of watching the movie, right? What you saw on screen, right? That is primary source. Okay, if you're referring to what TikTokers say about the movie, okay, that is secondary source. Okay. All right. So literary criticism is used by people who want to use an expert's opinion, okay, to support their own ideas. Yeah, basically what I mentioned. All right. It is important to note that literary criticism is used by readers to analyze, okay, and not by authors to write. Not directly. Not directly. Okay. As in here, literary criticism you can read literary criticism to help you understand things better, right? So you read a novel, for example, you want to get to the underlying meaning or whatsoever, you read up on the criticism, what other reviewers or critiques say about this novel, right? But to say that authors don't refer to critiques to write their work is also incorrect. Okay, because authors do care, okay, about what people say about their work. Okay, as in the authors write something, a novel or whatsoever, right? They publish it, and then they would read the review, the critique. They want to know what people think about their work as well, right? And often they would use these feedback, ideas, and so on to in their next work, or whatsoever, in the next book, right? Okay, unless you're George R. Martin, okay, then you just make money and then and grow fat, okay. And now, therefore, when you begin to analyze your novel, okay, you'll make use of expert and reliable literary criticism to support your opinion, which will develop for your paper. Okay, so any piece of text can be read through a number of different sets of glasses or lenses. Okay, so glasses here referring to the literary theory. Okay, and each of the theory will emphasize or will look for different things in the story. Okay. All right. So objectives of literary criticism. Okay. What's the objective of criticism? Number one, to understand. Okay. As in to you take part in criticism to better understand what you are watching or reading. Okay. To get to the to basically understand what's going on. All right. Interpretation. Okay. Using criticism, you interpret the themes, the characters, the motivations of the characters. Okay. You look for the underlying message of the that is in the story. Criticism will help you analyze and reach the underlying themes, message, intention of the author, and so on. Okay, that is the interpretation. Literary criticism also helps us evaluate. Evaluation is different from interpretation. Yeah, interpretation is looking for deeper meaning. Evaluation is making judgment. Was this good? Okay, if you take part in criticism, maybe you watch a movie, right? You watch the Odyssey, right? So criticism will help you understand the story, It'll help you interpret the themes of the story, right? Get to the underlying message, the symbolism in the story, and so on. Evaluation, as in criticism, can also help you evaluate, was that actually a good movie? Okay, was the acting okay? Okay, was the acting great? Okay, was the film nice? Okay, is the plot altogether good? Okay, did it help you build up suspense? Is it effective at holding your attention, okay, throughout the film? Okay, it helps you make that judgment. Did I know what I ate? Okay, the food that I ordered at this restaurant, was it actually good? Okay, okay. So it helps you make that judgment. Yeah. Uh, Apart from that, literary criticism can also help you to contextualize the material. Okay, contextualization here means that help you understand where does this story, okay, fit in the greater history or culture, or social aspect, okay, of being human. Okay, so for example, you watch the Odyssey, okay, and you criticism helps you understand the historical significance of this story. Okay, the how important the story is to culture. Okay, and the social context of the story, and so on. Okay, so it helps you place the this media that you have consumed in a greater you know in a wider aspect of humanities, and so on. Okay, and last but not least, okay, it helps you understand engagement with the readers. Okay, to recognize the importance of the reader's response to the text. Okay, criticism helps you pay attention to how other people respond to the literature. Okay, so for example, people that make a living writing film reviews, right? Yes, they make they judge the film and so on, right, based on theories or whatsoever, right? But they also look for the reaction of the audience. Okay, how do people react for the scenes, in the cinema, right? Okay, you have a jump scare in one of the scenes, right? Did people were people affected by that jump scare? Okay, or did people laugh, right? So you look for the engagement, the response that the audience or the readers produce in reaction to the text, right? You look at the comments that people leave on the YouTube videos, and so on. Okay, so these things, a critique would be sensitive to these things. Not sensitive, sorry, aware of these things. Yeah. Okay, so the importance of literary criticism, right? It deepens our understanding, it promotes critical thinking, it enhances appreciation of literature. Okay, it gives us cultural and historical insights into the literary work. It influences literary theory. Okay, so the more people critique literature, the more it develops theory. Okay, it aids in writing and creativity. Okay, so if you yourself, right, like to critique literature or films and so on, right, that in a way makes you a better writer, a better storyteller as well. Okay, because it builds your knowledge of what works and what doesn't work. Okay, it helps you understand the relevance to modern issues. Okay, preservation of literary heritage, and it encourages dialogue and debate. Okay, um, when you look at, okay, when if you find yourself interested in literature and the study of literature, okay, um, and you go to things like online journals, database, and so on, right? You can find, journal articles that is basically a literary critique. Again, so one critique would write about, uh, you know, um about one novel, okay, or one the works of one novelist, say that, oh, this novelist is actually like this, right? This writer is trying to address the issue of racism ke apa, kan? And then you could also find critiques that respond to that critique, okay? Also a journal article, okay? They write a journal article to respond to that critique. They say, no, this guy's wrong, okay? It's actually like this, and so on, okay? So that's a dialogue, that's a debate. But instead of, talking to one another directly, okay, they debate by publishing journal articles and so on, okay. Most of them are likely lecturers trying to, fill out the quota for article publications, yeah. Okay, let's look at history timeline of literary theory. Yeah. Okay. All right. So historical timeline. Okay, we're gonna go through step by step. Okay, and look at the different stages of how literary theory develops. Okay, and throughout history. Yeah. There's like 5 or 6 stages here. Okay, so let's have a look. Now, in this early stage, okay, ancient classical period to the medieval and Renaissance and so on, um, there is some connection, okay, but the line is a little bit blurred here, okay, largely because caused by what? No, believe it or not, caused by the collapse of the classical world, the collapse of the Roman Empire. Okay, so the Europe, okay, enters the dark age, okay, and a lot of things are kind of lost to history. Okay, Roman Empire falls. Okay, so the Roman Empire basically one of these inheritors of the classical world and so on, right? It collapsed, okay, and there's a dark age before transitioning into the medieval period and so on. Okay, so ancient and classical period, right? So we're looking back, a couple of thousand years here. Okay, early literary theories can be traced back to ancient civilization like Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, and so on. Okay, um, apa as from the early times that you have people creating literature, creating poems and so on, creating stage plays, right? There are already people expressing their opinions, in one way or another. Okay, so when you can imagine in ancient Mesopotamia, someone stage a play, right? Stage a drama, and then someone, create a batu bersurat, right? To say that the play was crap. Okay, so there is a concept of literary criticism stretching all the way back from there. Okay, Aristotle's one of the more academic works, okay, of literary theory you can find in the works of the Greek philosopher Aristotle. Okay, so he published this book called Poetics. Okay, and what poetics is basically is kind of like an analysis, okay, a critique of most of the Greek tragedies, Greek plays, okay, and Greek poetry of his time. Okay, so throughout the entire book, he's he's analyzing each of this tragedy, these stories. Okay, so that's stretching back all the way to the 4th century BC. Okay, now what do we have in the medieval time, the medieval period and the Renaissance period? We're talking about anywhere between the 5th century to the 17th century. All right. So during the medieval period, okay, literary theory was often intertwined with religious and moral consideration. Religiosity was very strong during this time, right? So you have works like Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy. Okay, Divine Comedy is a story. It's Italian, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, an Italian text where the writer Dante descends down into hell. Okay, to see how people get punished for what kind of crimes and so on. Okay, that's called the Divine Comedy. And then in England, okay, you have Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Okay, it's a collection of poetry. Okay, a lot of these works reflected ideas of religion, right, theological, as well as moral ideas. Now, in the Renaissance period, okay, in the Renaissance period, there is a rediscovery, yeah, of classical Greek and Roman literature. Okay, the story was that someone's renovating their basement, and then they found a chest full of these collection of old of these old manuscripts, poems, and so on. Okay, but that's a story. Most likely, okay, these classical stories were coming in from the east, okay, from Turkey, from the Arab world, okay, because when Roman Empire collapsed, okay, most of all that classical literature disappears, right? But in the eastern side, Arab scholars and so on have Arab and Turkic scholars have translated a lot of these Greek uh, poetry into Arabic and Turkic. Okay, and then later on it gets retranslated into medieval Italian, okay, and French and so on. Okay, in the Renaissance period, there is a renewed interest in the in Greek and Roman literature. Almost like a rediscovery, yeah, of this ancient world. Moving to the 17th and 18th century, you have a movement called the Enlightenment. Okay, the Enlightenment emphasizes scientific discovery. Okay, in this you might have heard this term Enlightenment before from your sejarah textbook. Yeah, Enlightenment movement and so on. What's it about? It's about shifting the focus to scientific inquiry, making a lot of science experiments and so on, right? But it on a philosophical level, it is also reshaping the way that people think. Okay, the emphasis was on trying to be very rational, trying to be more secular, right? Trying to be more or less emotional. Okay, more rational thinking. Okay, and it is a philosophy that also covers the way that people live their lives. Okay, things like love and marriage and so on is influenced by this thinking of rationality. Okay, who do you marry? Well, obviously someone who is rich. Why? Because they have money. Okay, the question of love and so on did not really matter. Okay, you are focused more on the material world. That is philosophy of the Enlightenment. Okay, the here and now, the money and so on. Make your choices based on rational decision making. Okay, that is the Enlightenment. In a way, you can say the Enlightenment is a counter movement, okay, a counter movement or a reaction from the Renaissance period. Okay, why? Because the Renaissance period were focused on religion, right? Religion, Christianity, and so on, right? So the Enlightenment period is a reaction against that. Okay, it's a counter movement against religion. So that's why they focus more on rationality. Can okay, so writers like John Dryden, Alexander Pope, okay, formulated something called neoclassical theories, okay, which favored order, reason, okay, and the imitation of classical models. Okay, classical models here referring to models of Aristotle and so on. Okay, the way that people thought, the way that people are thinking, mathematicians of the classical world, so all this nerd stuff. Okay, so that's all. That's the Enlightenment. They want to move away from religion into a rational, scientific worldview. Okay, and everything must be rational. Everything must be calculated, right? Now, what came from the Enlightenment, okay, was again a counter movement, okay, a reactionary force, that is Romanticism. Okay, Romanticism is something that came in the 18th to 19th century. Okay, Romanticism is, like I said, a counter to Enlightenment. If the Enlightenment was focused on just being rational, okay, the Romantics changed that view. Okay, the Romantics focus on emotional expression, okay, on individualism, on imagination. The Romantics would say, why would you try to snuff out things like emotions? It is what makes us human. Yeah. Individualism. Okay. So the term romantic, okay, is often related to sense of adventure, right? Concepts of heroism and so on. Okay. So the romanticism, the romantic movement in the 18th century is acting against, okay, the Enlightenment. Okay, so that's why they focus on things like emotional expression, okay, individualism, and so on. So in terms of literature, okay, there's also an evolution there. What was valued in the age of Enlightenment was literature that is centered around very scientific things, okay, very logical and rational decisions, and so on. Okay, so the characters all do what is most rational, take the most rational action, and so on. Okay, do what is most logical. Meanwhile, when you compare that to literature that is written in the Romantic period by Romantic authors, okay, their literature, their works of literature tend to focus more on adventure, on heroes that are driven by their emotions, right, by their passions, and so on. All right, works that are very, very imaginative. Okay, you take, for example, one of the most famous author of the Romantic period. Okay, in the case of England, of course, no, not even just England, in Europe. Okay, there was this author named Lord Byron. Okay, he was a Romantic author. All right, he lived that life of adventure. He travels around Europe and so on. Okay, gets taken hostage. Okay, in Albania. All right, he lived that life of adventure, and he wrote about it. He wrote poems and stories about traveling the world and so on. Okay, and all of these adventure stories and so on. Okay, his characters in the story are this swashbuckling hero archetype. Okay, often driven by passions and emotions. In the Count of Monte Cristo type of character, right? The basically the model for what is today figures like Bruce Wayne, right? In Batman. Okay, Lord Byron's characters in his stories were basically the archetype, the prototype, yeah, for what Bruce Wayne is today. Okay, so something like that. A lot of his works were also very imaginative. Okay, one of his poems. Okay, that no, 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 I'm thinking of someone else. That uh, I'm thinking of someone else. Sorry, not Lord Byron. In terms of imagination, there's this poet, also a friend of Byron, Percy Shelley. Okay, also a romantic writer, also living that very heroic lifestyle. Okay, the adventurous lifestyle. Okay, and he writes about these very imaginative things. All right, Percy Shelley's poem. What was it called? Ozymandias. Okay, I remember that. All right, it's talking about this king of kings. Okay, Ozymandias. Okay, look at my eternal kingdom and so on. Okay, it's all imaginative things. Okay, things that you don't have in everyday England. Okay, that's all a celebration of human imagination. Okay, that's the Romantics. Now, the story of literary theory, literature criticism, and so on does not end there. Okay, because if the Romantics are apa, too caught up, right, in this whole imagination, emotions, and all that, right, what came after them was a counter movement to the Romantics. Okay, what do we have in the 19th century? You have realism and naturalism. Okay, what do you think is happening here? Okay, if the Romantics were so focused on imagination, okay, what came after them was focus on the portrayal of realism. Okay, they say these people are too imaginative, your poems, your stories are too out of this world. Okay, people crave for something more realistic. Okay, so that's what you have in the 19th century. Okay, portrayal of realism became the new hot thing. Okay, naturalism is about connection to the natural world and so on. Okay, portrayal of nature and things like that. Realism, on the other hand, is obsessed with depicting everyday life, everyday mundane life, right? In very very accurate detail. Okay, most of the time, most of the time most of the time is what we're talking about here is portrayal of poverty. Okay, portrayal of people living in living in slums, living in poor conditions, and so on. Okay, one of the most famous author of the 19th century of this realism movement was an English author named Charles Dickens. Okay, so Charles Dickens wrote in that realism method. Okay, what his a lot. You take a look at his novels, right? What do you have? Oliver Twist, one of his most famous novels, about what? An orphan growing up, with a band of thieves. Okay, another one of his famous story, A Christmas Carol, right, has this portrayal of uh, very poor people. Okay, another novel, Hard Times. Okay, is that Charles Dickens as well? Yes, it is. Okay, Hard Times is Charles Dickens as well. What's that about? Poor people. Okay, um, So yeah, and Charles Dickens have personal experience with growing up poor and so on. His father was thrown in jail for because he couldn't pay back his debt, right? So he has first-hand experience at being poor. Okay, so he writes about that. Okay, and people like that for some reason. Portrayal of how poor people are living, okay, back then. Okay, so if you read a Charles Dickens novel, okay, very high chance that it's going to talk about poor people. Okay, so people were interested in that accuracy of portraying everyday life. Yeah, and for some reason the writers back then were obsessed with portrayal of poor people. I tell you why I think that is. Yeah, because a lot of the customers, a lot of the readers back then who were people that are middle upper and upper class people. Okay, an upper class gentleman is not does not live. Okay, does not live in that poor condition, right? Oh, they have no experience of poverty. All right, so so what do they like? Oh, okay. So they read, Oliver Twist for oh, look, this is how poor people live. Okay. So they I guess that's why there's an interest in that. Okay. Anyway, that's realism. Okay. People were interested in that. Okay. Now, when we move into the 20th century, again we see a change, a counter movement. Okay. In the 20th century, you have modernism. Okay, modernism and structuralism. What is this all about? Modernism rejects traditional literary form. Okay, and they embrace experimentation and fragmentation. Like I said, it is a counter movement to what came before. If the 19th century realism is all about trying to portray what is everyday life as accurately as possible, right? You're not trying to romanticize anything, right? You want realistic portrayal of things, right? Modernism says why, what for? There's no need for me to read about how I live my life. Okay, I experience it every day. Okay, what's the point? So in the 20th century, it's all you think about what comes what is invented in the 20th century. You have industrialization, you have machines, you have one of the early computers, like mechanical computer and all that, right? Typewriters, okay, and so on. It's an age of wonder, right? What could the future hold, right? So that's what people were interested in. Experimentation. They want something new, not what what they see or experience every day. Okay, they want something new. So in the 20th century, you have experimentation and so on. Okay, one genre of literature that became very popular in the 20th century is the science fiction genre. Okay, so what is science fiction? What does science fiction talk about? It's talking about the future. It's talking about uh, you know uh, science experiments or whatsoever. Kan? Okay, the future, right? So generally, science fiction talks about the future, right? And it became popular in the 20th century, in the modern, in the period of modernism. One of the most popular and most significant author of that period was an English author again. All I'm referring to all English author here, right? Because mostly we deal with English texts. An important author of that time period was a man named H.G. Wells. Okay, and he wrote primarily science fiction novels. Okay, what are some of the novels he wrote? The War of the Worlds. Okay, where there's an alien invasion in Britain. Okay, aliens riding this mech suits, right? They're stomping around, around England. Okay, Invisible Man. Yes, that's right. Okay, another novel. The H.G. Wells also wrote The Time Machine. Okay, talking about what this English gentleman created this machine that can travel to the future. Okay, so that's a science fiction. Okay, all of that became very popular in this period because people were very excited about what the future might hold. Okay, what the future might bring. Now, what did the future bring? Okay, what did the future bring? What do we see? We don't have flying cars. Maybe if you're counting my V, right? My V is a flying car, right? You see those things chase you on the highway, right? Basically flying. Okay, but what does the future hold? If you look back in history, what did the future give to the modernists? I tell you right now, it gives you wars. Yeah, terrible wars. Right? You get World War I. Right, the First World War. It was also called the Great War because it's so terrible. Right, and then after that, a few years after that, you get World War II, the sequel. Right, the sequel to World War I. All right, so two terrible world wars that destroyed a lot of the old worlds. Right, so they were looking forward to a very positive, very the word is utopian future, but instead what do they get? They get two terrible world wars, the second one ending in atomic bombs, right, dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? And you look at that and you say, that is the future. Okay, that's the future. We're hoping for flying cars, we're hoping for space travel and so on. Okay, no, you don't get that. You get atomic bombs instead, right? So, what is the reaction? How do people react to that? You have postmodernism. Okay, what is post-structural or postmodernism all about? What do people focus on here? Okay, we focus. So postmodernism celebrated complexity, diversity, intertextuality of literature. Okay, it rejects the idea of single authoritative interpretation. So reader respond is part of postmodernism. Another thing that postmodernism is known for is absurdity. It is known for absurdity. It is known for satire. It is known for parody. Yeah, that is what postmodernism is all about. It is reactionary. People in the 20th century, people in modernism were so optimistic. Now look at them. Okay, so postmodernism is all about looking back at those things and making fun of it. Okay, ridiculing all of that. Okay, because people have lost hope. Okay, people growing up in this postmodern world are more sarcastic. They're more sarcastic. They are less serious. They are more a lot of nihilists. Okay, nihilistic people, right? Yeah, memes. What are memes? Memes is a form of parody, a form of satire, right? It is very postmodern. Yeah, it is very postmodern. Okay, people are less serious. Okay, and all of that is a reaction to what came before. All right. Okay, so in the 21st century, you have contemporary literary theory. Some people, some critics would argue that we are still living in the postmodern world. Okay, we can't really judge because this thing is developing, still in under development, right? Maybe 50 years from now, we can look back and say, oh, that's a new period and so on. Okay, but contemporary literary theory continues to evolve. Okay, incorporating various interdisciplinary approaches, gender issues, post-colonial theory, eco-criticism, digital humanities, and so on. This is something new. Okay, if we look at contemporary theory, we're working with what is happening every day. Okay, so we're looking at so new theories are popping up. Okay, theories to literary theories to talk about things like virtual reality, right? Uh, that's a theory called hyper reality. Okay, there's a literary theory called hyper reality. What is that about? It's about trying to understand, trying to make sense, trying to talk about virtual worlds. Okay, um, if you've ever watched any of the Matrix movies, right? That's something that hyper reality is focused on, right? The Matrix. If you've watched the Matrix, it's basically there's a parallel world, in the computer system and so on. Right? That's where people are living in, right? That's the virtual world. That is hyper reality. Okay, and if you think the Matrix, oh, that's something quite new, right? The idea of this hyper reality has been introduced in much earlier science fiction works and so on. If you look at works of Philip K. Dick, for example. Okay, what a name, yeah, Philip K. Dick. He wrote a novel called what's the novel called? We can remember for you. Okay, I think it's called We Can Remember for You. All right. Um, is it We Can Remember for You? Yeah, I think so. Okay, something along those lines. Basically, that is the inspiration for the movie Total Recall. Okay, where they make this fake memory, they install this fake memory for you. Okay, that is also hyper reality. Okay, new theories, okay, nowadays coming out to talk about our relationship with AI, with robots, right, with artificial intelligence. The concept of artificial intelligence, okay, is not something new. Okay, it's something again introduced in the 70s, the 80s, and so on. All right. Again, I can refer to American writer Philip K. Dick. Okay, he has a novel that talks about AI. Right. You can read "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" Okay, or watch the film that is inspired by that novel, Blade Runner. Okay, same thing really. Okay, so it talks about that, right? How we treat AI, for example, right? How we treat AI, how we treat androids, machines, robots, and so on. Okay, our relationship with them. Do we consider them human or less than human? Okay, we as the creator and the creation now. Okay, what does that relationship look like? We have, in creating AI, we have become gods ourselves in terms of we have a living creation, right? What does that relationship look like? Okay, so that is, we have literary theory developing to address that. Yeah, so that is contemporary theory. Okay, I'm tired. Yeah, let's let's finish this. Okay, and then we can go home lah. Okay, so literary theories and approaches. Let's quickly have a look at it. And most of this we've talked about yesterday. Okay, psychoanalytic criticism, that's using psychology to analyze literature. Okay, formalism looks at shape, design of literature. Okay, structuralism looks at underlying message. Okay, post-structuralist says that the underlying message, the underlying system is there, but it's at the same time not what you think. Okay, it is ever changing, it depends on people and so on. Okay, that's post-structure, a bit of a bit it's one of those things that you can get high and then read about, okay, and then have your mind blown. All right. Reader response theory focus highly on the the way that people respond to literature, to films, to text, and so on. Okay, taking into consideration the audience, the readers' opinions, etc. Right? The opinions of the readers matter more, right? It does matter. And when we talk about reader response, we're not just talking about, oh, how people react. You baca, you read you read the novel, oh, and then you cry, oh, so sad, and so on. Okay, or you watch the movie, right, and then you get a jump scare or whatever. It's not just that. It's not just the reaction, the emotion that you get. Okay, look at the different ways that people can respond to text. You read Harry Potter. Some people read Harry Potter series. They enjoy it so much. What do? They write fan fiction, okay, about the characters. Right? They post it on. What do you think Wattpad? Or how do you think Wattpad stays in business? Right? Okay, it's all thanks to this apa fanfic authors, right? These furry authors and so on. Okay, they're the one keeping keeping that business afloat. All right. Uh, so all of that is reader response. Okay, all of that reader response. Um, what's the other thing? For fan fiction. You have fan fiction. You also have fan art, right? Fan art. That's another area of reader response. Okay. Apa ni? What is that thing called? That app where you can look up people's drawings and stuff. Last time I did Deviant Art. Okay, and then there's another one. What's it called? What's it called? I looked at it recently. My daughter likes to so I print stuff from it. Pinterest. Okay, no, not webtoon, not webtoon, Pinterest. Okay, basically places where people upload their shitty fan art. Okay, uh, right. Okay, fan art that is part of reader response. Okay, you go on DeviantArt. How many My Little Pony fan art profiles are there out there? Right, that's all reader response. Okay, it's all part of this literary criticism experience. Yeah, feminist criticism, looking at gender roles and so on, right? Portrayals of women and things like that. Modernism, postmodernism, we talked about this just now, right? Looking at complexity of modern life, impact of industrialization, etc. Post-colonial theory looks at impact of colonization. Marxist criticism focuses on social economic factors, power struggle between classes, and so on. Okay, let's finish up here just a little bit more. Traditional critical theories. This is mostly something that we're going to talk about next week. Okay, traditional critical theories are referring to some the older method of analyzing literature. Okay, these theories are still important because they laid the groundwork for all of the different criticism theories that came after. Okay, so in our case, we're going to look at 4 of them. Okay, but but for our class discussion, I'm going to focus on one. I'm going to focus on the Carl Jung's archetype criticism. Okay, so archetypical criticism says that there are recurring symbols and themes throughout human storytelling. Okay, so this is based on Carl Jung's archetype psychology. Okay, historical criticism looks at the how does the story fit or in history, how what events in history in time period in time influence the creation of the text and so on. Biographical criticism will look at the author's life, the author's personal experience, their beliefs, their religion, and so on, and how that influenced the creation of the text. Okay, mythological criticism explores the presence of mythology and religious element in the literature. Yeah. Okay. Do you have any questions, Klaus? Do you have any questions? anything to ask?
No, sir.
No question. What about the rest of you? Hafi has no question. The rest of you, are you still here? Okay, or have you fallen asleep? Okay, gone and done other
sir.
things with your life. Okay, while you listen to this lecture. Okay, all right, never mind. No questions. That's okay then. Thank you very much. Okay, if you got distracted, if you if you fell asleep during this lecture, don't worry. I will share the lecture recording with you afterwards. You can watch it. You can read the notes and so on. Okay, I'll share the link to the Padlet once I set it up. All right. So that's all for today. Thank you very much. I will see you all next week.
Sir,
Yeah,
sir,
sorry.
can I talk with you for a sec?
Yeah, can. Yeah, no problem.
Um,
Wait.
but
Yeah. Let me turn off the recording. Okay.
okay.
All right. That's all for this lecture. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Yeah.